Silent Hill 2 Remake looks incredible, but for many gamers, your only options to play this are the PS5 or the PC. And I myself, at this junction, while I talk about it in some of my videos, haven't fully committed to the idea yet of grabbing a PS5. And so what I've done is I've went back to my old PC and I've upgraded it so I could try and play Silent Hill 2. However, my PC, even with some of the upgrades I've added to it recently, would still be considered a low budget or low end gaming PC. And so in this video, I'm going to show you what components I upgraded, what I ended up using as the settings for this, and how it runs on my computer. So let's take a look. When I purchased my PC, probably back in 2017, it was a Acer-based computer. It came out of the box with an i5-7400 with 12 gigabytes of RAM and an old school non-solid state hard drive. At that time, it didn't even have a graphics card packaged in. I believe I spent about 300 bucks or something on it. And the first thing I did was upgraded the graphics card to a 1050 Ti 4 gigabyte from Zotac. And at that time period, it ran most games at a reasonable frame rate with decent graphics, and it got me through to play a lot of the games that I liked at the time on PC. However, over the years, my interest has completely faded from really gaming on PC, so I've kind of left it stagnant until, of course, my only two options to play the Silent Hill 2 Remake were either shell out $600-700 for a PS5 or try to play it on PC. So I took the gamble, purchased it for this PC, and out of the gate, it ran pretty horribly. It barely managed to operate at low graphics, and the load times were horrendous. So I decided to give my old low-end gaming PC a little bit of love and tried to upgrade some of the components, with my main goal being that I could run this at medium with decent frames per second, so around 30 frames per second. And also be able to benefit from some of the bells and whistles of the Unreal 5 engine, so this didn't look completely god-awful. So what I did, the first thing I did was upgraded the graphics card. Now, you have to understand that this build that I originally had has a very weak power supply, so any graphics card that I use has to run off of the motherboard. So I ended up picking up a Zotac GTX1650 OC edition for this, and that's a tremendous leap over the 1050 Ti in terms of performance and everything else. And it seemed to out of the gate actually get Silent Hill 2 Remake running at a very reasonable frame rate around the medium settings. Now, the other piece to this puzzle was swapping out my old hard drive for something better. So I ended up getting a very cheap solid state hard drive off of Amazon for around 30 bucks. It's 256 gigabytes. And I ended up putting that in place of my existing hard drive, reinstalling Windows. And those two things seem to have added a tremendous level of performance to this game. Now keep in mind, the Silent Hill 2 Remake wants a minimum of 8 gigabytes of VRAM, which this card does not have. It also wants a minimum of 16 gigabytes of RAM in general, which my rig only has 12 gigabytes. And it also wants a much better processor than what my computer actually carries. But so far, I've played quite a bit of the Silent Hill 2 Remake, and I'm very happy with the performance. The first thing I'll go into is the actual settings. So a couple things that I did is, if you take a look, I ended up playing around. I wanted this to run at 1080p, so I was able to achieve that. I did leave the frame rate capped at unlimited. I turned off VSync. The biggest change to this to make this run smoothly was to put on super sampling at FSR 1.0, and I also used the quality preset. Now, as far as the rendering, I ended up going through the advanced quality settings and playing with this a bit. I found that anti-aliasing at TXAA worked very well and looked relatively decent. The resolution scalability I put to 200%. I played with the shadows and left them at medium. That seems to work quite well. The effects, medium. The separate translucency I left on. The lens flare, again, I left to medium. Motion blur seemed to impact my performance quite a bit, so I'm okay with running without that entirely. The screen space ambient occlusions I have left on. SSR I have left on. However, I've put that quality at low. And of course, the image sharpening I left at high. These settings so far, what I'm getting now, when you use fraps, you end up losing a bit of performance. So I've also filmed manually as well as through fraps to kind of give you guys some examples. But these settings so far, while not perfect, I seem to be getting consistently between 45 to 30 frames per second, depending on what's going on. I rarely get any dramatic dips under that 30 frames per second. And now, of course, you're not going to get the PS5 level or a higher end PC's level of image quality out of this. However, I'm getting very reasonable performance overall, very playable performance. And a couple quick examples, you'll notice the game looks pretty good. Now, there's a couple little clipping issues that seem to be triggered by the FSR 1.0. However, without the FSR 1.0 on, you end up in a situation where the game ends up running around 20 to 25 frames per second, which to me is starting to move into a territory that doesn't make this feel comfortable playing. However, with these current settings, I do appear to be getting indoor, outdoors, again, even with a lot going on, 30 to 45 frames per second. Now, one overall issue that I am noticing is the Unreal 5 engine seems to have some hiccups, and what I mean by that is you seem to get some stuttering between different areas that you go through in the game, and I'm not sure if that's related to the way the game's loading or the lack of high-end SSD that I purchased for this computer. But overall, for the $130 or so plus the cost of the game that I've spent, I'm finding that on the medium to high mix settings that I have going on here at 1080p, the game appears to be running pretty well. And it's quite playable to the point that I'm intending to continue going into this, and I might be tweaking the settings a bit more, but I'm intending to finish the game this way. And of course, once it does release on the Xbox, or if I get a PS5, I may end up giving it another playthrough on that. But ultimately, I just want to share this video as I know there's still many gamers like myself who have budget or low-end gaming PCs, and these are the settings that appeared to work for me, and I would recommend toying with them just like I did to kind of get your comfortable parameters of how you'd like to play this great remake that just came out.